presentation, which is entitled Unlock Your EPYC, trademark, Advantage. And Daniel Bounds, who is the Senior Director of the AMD Data Center Products Group, is going to speak to us. A bit about Daniel. Daniel Bounds is the Senior Director for Data Center Products at AMD. He is responsible for driving product strategy, marketing, business development for server, networking, and storage industry segments. AMD is back, and so is the competition in the data center space. And the new EPYC processor is ideal for scale and density for both physical and virtual hosting environments. So let's find out a little bit more about what's happening, and I want to understand, what does EPYC stand for? Please help me welcome a CloudFest welcome for Daniel Bounds.
There we go. So normally there would be sound to this video. There we go. Okay, so first off, good afternoon, CloudFest. It is great to be back. It's great to be back in the Dome. And for us at AMD, thank you. It's great to be back for the first time in a while with a really, really compelling product. In fact, we named it EPYC for a reason. So EPYC pronounced EPYC, for those of you who haven't seen in the past. And it is a really, really exciting time for AMD, specifically in cloud and hosting. And if you read the headlines, you'll notice that there's a bit of a sea change. This is a brand new AMD. This is a brand new product. And it's the first of what we believe is going to be a transformational set of products for the data center and ways to unlock this from a cloud and a hosting perspective. Now, when we talk about EPYC, we talk about it in terms of what it can do and what it is. We believe that the approach that we took, starting from a clean sheet of paper, rethinking what's possible in the data center, led us to an EPYC moment, if you will. It led us to the conclusion that the architectures of today need more. We need more innovation, and we need more openness. And that's what EPYC is all about. So if you think about powering the workloads of today, it begins with a more balanced architecture, an architecture that scales from a core count, from a memory capacity perspective, but also from a memory bandwidth perspective. There are lots of things, lots of trade-offs that you as architects and you as cloud business people have to make today that you really shouldn't. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what those are. From an optimization standpoint, it's about rethinking how you can deploy and monetize not just 2-socket servers, but 1-socket servers. And we think that's a really compelling value point. And then finally, in the age of GDPR and in the age of Spectre and Meltdown and all of the challenges that we face and our customers face, we believe security is at the forefront of what's needed. So let me talk a little bit about the numbers, and then the rest of this will be more about the product in the context of your market and the solution. When we think about the engine that is the modern-day server inside of your cloud and hosting environments, your ability to monetize these capabilities is absolutely critical, and we understand that. That's why with EPYC, we architected in breakpoints anywhere from 8 to 32 cores. You know, the leader in innovation and the innovation engine in the CPU space is absolutely back, and we've seen that with the response that we've had from EPYC. Incidentally, if you get a chance, take a look at some of the early hosting and cloud partners who have adopted EPYC. Hetzner is here this week in the hosting space. We've made some public announcements with Packet Hosting, a bare metal cloud provider that has operations across the globe. And then we've also made some compelling gains on instances with both Microsoft and in Greater China, Baidu. The net is the architecture lends itself to better monetizing the underlying feature set and capability that you can turn into customer value. 128 lanes of PCIe, 8 memory channels, and you're going to see in a second, that's absolutely critical to addressing the workloads of not just today, but where we're going. And being able to confidently invest in a roadmap that's going to help you solve business problems. And then not restraining this idea of memory capacity. We're in a world that, memory has been a hot topic, right? From pricing to, what is the right configuration for performance. It is absolutely central, and we've tried to architect in more options at your disposal to go and monetize your memory footprints. It's also manifest in the way that we're bringing this to market. You hear the quote, it's attributed to a lot of folks, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. This is the product stack. On purpose, we designed this to be extremely simplistic, essentially pivoting off of core counts and then unrestraining the rest of it. So whether you're buying at the bottom of the stack or at the top of the stack, you're able to take advantage of all the memory capacity, all the I/O, SMT, turbo, hardware encryption. It is a very compelling argument no matter where you are in the stack, and this means that you're no longer limited from a TCO perspective with what the competition is bringing you today. And we think that's pretty epic. In fact, when you think about it in the context of two-socket, which is exactly what you would expect, we live in a world today where for the longest time we've been kind of in the Henry Ford model of servers where, when Henry Ford was getting started, you could have any color as long as it was black. Well, now you can have any server you want as long as it's most likely a two-socket. And we don't think that's right. However, in the two-socket world that is dominated by the scale and performance, we have leadership in almost every category. More memory bandwidth, more memory capacity, and greater I/O density than you can get. And again, it doesn't matter where you are in the stack. More importantly, when we think about this in the context of what it means to your bottom line, your ability to go and serve your customers more efficiently, as you think about price points throughout the market, everything from a 500 to 800 up to 4,000, and translate that into system cost, you get more performance for every IT dollar that you invest. And it's been a long time in this industry since we've had this type of capability and differentiation. And we want to make sure that you're aware of this, because we think that this is one thing that's going to help transform this industry and rethink what's capable. But when we take a look at bar charts like this is a spec-int comparison, spec-int rate. When we break down the heart of the market, we take a look at the capabilities that are inherent in an EPYC CPU versus a middle-of-the-road silver Intel Xeon. If you look at the core count, we'll actually offer more cores, significantly more L3 if your application takes advantage of that. Of course, the greater memory bandwidth that I talked about, more memory capacity, more memory speed, more I/O for less. And that's a critical point to this, is we believe that the way that you as hosters and as cloud providers need to think about the underlying economics, there is a lever and a choice when it comes to the CPU that you build your systems around, how you deploy those, how you cluster those, and how you offer those to customers. And that's just the beginning, because we also think that you should have a choice when it comes to the underlying server architecture, and that comes back to the power of one socket. I've been in this industry over 20 years. Predominantly, the conversation has always centered around predominantly two-socket. Sometimes we have workloads that take advantage of the memory footprint for four-socket and above. For the first time, we have a legitimate one-socket. And for dedicated hosting, this is a killer platform. This is something that you can now deploy. You take out all of the cost of the socket infrastructure, the socket itself. EPYC, by the way, is a system on a chip. It integrates a South Bridge. It is a fully integrated CPU. Gives you better performance, and again, spec-int comparison, we do even better on spec-FP, against a 5000 series, more performance, and a fifth less the power. Again, something that you should consider as you're building out an infrastructure. Equally important is what you can do from a storage perspective, and really a total cost of ownership perspective. As you're building the architectures that you need, whether that's a dedicated hosting box, whether that's a storage box, whether there are other services that you're providing that need the capability but could also be right-sized to a one socket, EPYC is really powerful. Now in a one socket, you get the 32 cores. By the way, you also get the 128 lanes of full bandwidth direct attached PCIe, which means PCI bridges go out the door. And the trade-offs that you have to make around what level of bandwidth from a networking perspective you can configure into your box, those go out the door. And you're also balancing a system that has per socket 8 memory channels, generally speaking 16 DIMM slots. It's a huge amount of capacity in a one socket that, again, we've never had this choice unless you go and buy a 2-socket and only populate one, in which case you're vastly sub-optimizing your overall total cost of ownership. There we go. All right, so let's talk performance. You could argue the point that, yeah, it's great to have the power savings, it's great to have similar feature sets, or in some cases even advantage feature sets, but what about performance? Well, what's really interesting is one socket, one EPYC to 2 Xeons. As we look in the heart of the market, close to 90% of the market buys below $2,500 per CPU. The vast majority are well below $1,000 per CPU. That's where the one socket value proposition is the greatest. And you don't have to sacrifice things like core count or multi-threading or memory bandwidth or capacity. It really is what we call a no-compromise one-socket server. And again, in the concept of workloads and applications, what do they demand? Gone are the days that you need a second socket for resiliency. That doesn't exist anymore. Now you've got to buy a second socket for all the right reasons, which is you need that horsepower to provide the service that your customers need. We think there's a lot of workloads that are going to migrate to a one socket, and if you take a look at the greater market, you'll see that some of the leaders in the industry have begun very aggressively adopting one socket platforms in their portfolio, and that's very exciting to us. And then I also mentioned security. Security is something that is right in front of our face every day. It's extremely rare not to open up the news and read about another data breach. Worse, you read about the economic cost of that data breach. I was in Europe about 3 or 4 months ago, and we had a conversation around GDPR and the restrictions and the severity of the penalties. Well, so this is a world that we live in. Data sovereignty is extremely important. Wouldn't it be great if you had a way to fully encrypt that system? Today, you've got baseline encryption from a drive perspective, but when that information gets loaded up into memory, it's a different set of challenges. What's interesting is, that number of records breached per day is staggering, but it's not so staggering when you look at the number of breaches where the data was encrypted. The level of sophistication and the level of access have to be so much greater when there's encryption involved. And so what EPYC does is delivers on the promise of a very robust roadmap that goes out and specifically addresses security. Full memory encryption. We have a capability on EPYC that allows you to flip a switch in BIOS, flip a bit, and fully encrypt the memory space. If you think about this in terms of your remote instances, or really as devices continue to migrate to the edge, being able to fully encrypt that memory space is going to be absolutely critical to securing your data. There's also another piece to this, which we call secure encrypted virtualization, that is a new capability that AMD introduced, again, a leadership position in the area of security that delivers hardware-enabled secure multi-tenancy. This gives you the ability, whether you're in a container, whether you're in a VM, Or you can even partition your bare metal instance the way that you want to and offer this ability to separate, driven by very specific keys that only the tenants will have. It prevents this scenario where the operator or administrator has access. They no longer have access. The only people who have access to that data are the owners of that key. Again, we think this is very compelling in the age of cloud, and especially multi-cloud, where you have data that needs to move between the instances. Now we have a way to do that, and do that in a way that doesn't impact the underlying application. Very critical. We think that this is truly taking data encryption to the next level. There's another piece to this as well. There's an element as we get back into this market, we being AMD, and really you, the hosting and cloud community, as we look at AMD EPYC in the context of what you can do, there's also a question around how well can I integrate this? How well does this promote the standards that I've adopted or that I plan to adopt? How well does this interoperate with the OS, with the hypervisor, and with the application space? And the key message here is it just works. So the reason, many of you may have heard, rewind a couple of years ago, AMD had a very distinct ARM strategy. One of my first jobs was bringing our ARM part to market, the A1100. The very distinct learning from that was the ecosystem's not anywhere near ready. And more importantly, at that point in time, it was really tough having those conversations, predominantly because people knew that EPYC was in the wings. They knew that we were doing something in the x86 space. And we knew that seamless interoperability, adherence to standards, was absolutely critical. Our focus moving forward is to continue to build out that ecosystem further and further, working with all of the major Linux distributions, working with all of the flavors of hypervisors that you guys tell us are important. I'll put a shameless plug in here. So we've got a great booth property this week. We love CloudFest. We've staffed it, and we would love to have conversations with you around what stack are you running? What environment does it go into? What type of power draw is it that you're trying to solve for? As we further instantiate EPYC in this generation, in the preceding generations, your guidance and direction is going to be absolutely critical. We value the cloud and hosting space significantly and want to build that into our future as we do this. So we think that there's a lot of value in coming to market with something that is going to seamlessly integrate into your environment. The other piece that, there we go. The other piece that I think is really, really important is knowing where EPYC shines. So the interesting thing about coming back into a market where AMD in the past with Opteron had a tremendous footprint in certain areas. AMD was the first to market with VT instructions. AMD was the first to multi-core. AMD was the first to break the gigahertz barrier. AMD in many ways was the innovation engine of the past, and that's the level or the bar that we want to exceed with EPYC. But we want to do that in the context of workloads that are powering the world. Our focus with EPYC, and just to kind of give those who have followed this, this generation is codenamed Naples. With Naples, our focus was very, very specific to cloud and hyperscale. The secure multi-tenancy that I talked about only came to being because we saw a need, we saw an opportunity, and we connected those two together. From a design perspective, cloud and discrete hosting are things that we've been thinking about this whole time, and it's a step back. It's making sure that we're hitting the mark in terms of the value proposition, giving you the tools that you need to be ultimately successful in your business, both here and abroad. Virtualized back office. So as you continue to build out services in your offerings, we believe that this is a tremendous value proposition, not just from a CPU perspective, but one of the things that I'll talk about in a second is AMD is unique. We're one of the only ones that actually provide both acceleration in the form of GPUs, as well as CPUs. And now that we have a high-performance CPU in the data center space, it opens the aperture in terms of what we can do for you and what you can do for your customers. As you can imagine, with the type of PCIe and I/O footprint that comes with EPYC in both a one-socket and a two-socket configuration, software-defined storage is absolutely a sweet spot for EPYC. So as you're thinking about your storage tiers and your offerings, be thinking about EPYC and its capability to create better balance between cores, between the memory that you need to feed those cores and the bandwidth of that memory to feed those cores, but also all of the storage that you can attach to that. It really changes the paradigm of what you can do and what you can do more cost effectively. On the data analytics side, this one was probably the easiest for everybody to wrap their heads around when we launched this back in June of last year. Excuse me. Being able to load up larger, more difficult problem sets into memory and take advantage of the 24 or 32 cores that are available in EPYC is absolutely critical. And so in the area of data analytics, we believe that EPYC is a great product. The other piece that sort of blends into is, as you think about providing more computationally rich services to your customers, HPC is an area that continues to evolve. And consuming HPC from a service perspective also continues to evolve. And so we think that there's definite highlights. One would be computational fluid dynamics. With the memory bandwidth that we have, it's not a core conversation, it's how do you feed those cores. And our performance is dramatically better than anything that you can get in the x86 space, and we think this is value that you can translate as you think about those type of environments. And then lastly, machine learning is something that I know is kind of, it's the soup du jour. It's the thing that we all talk about as we're looking to the horizon. It's an area of investment. From a framework down into what technology we're underpinning, AMD has made a lot of gains and will continue to index on this area of the market. So if you think about the implications of that for EPYC, it really boils down to architecture. Machine intelligence, ingest of that data, the training of that data, and the inference of that data is predominantly an acceleration conversation. We have our machine intelligence tuned GPUs to go and address that. But what's also interesting is the total cost of ownership that can be achieved now with attaching a number of those accelerators, in this case 6, still having I/O left to handle networking, but doing it in a configuration that's hyper-flexible, provides openness in the ecosystem, and helps ultimately lower TCO. If this is something that your customers are asking for, come see us. We think there's a lot that can be done in this area. And I realize I'm covering a lot of bases here, but we could not be more excited to be here with you. We want you to know that EPYC is available. EPYC is, in terms of what we did back in June and where we are today, it's been crazy, and crazy in the best way possible. We have the largest portfolio of enterprise and cloud-tuned systems that we've ever had. And we think that we've created a portfolio that is highly attenuated to the needs that a lot of you have expressed as we've been here in the first couple of hours of CloudFest this year. Being able to fit into highly dense form factors, whether that be a 1U 19-inch form factor or a more dense form factor, being able to drive higher storage connect through 2U boxes, both one socket and two socket, being able to buy from Tier 1 OEMs, being able to source from the channel via the ODMs. There is lots of flexibility. And again, if you take a look, come by our booth. We have lots of systems from lots of vendors there. We want to find the platform that's absolutely right for you, and it's a global footprint. So we would love to have that conversation. One of the last things I'll leave you with is this idea that as AMD gets back into this market, how do we make sure that you know that we are betting the company, that we are absolutely attenuated to the long term with this product? And there's no better way to talk about that than to talk about where we're going from a roadmap perspective. I call this the tour of Italy. We've landed on Italian cities as our code names. Many of you, if you've followed EPYC and AMD, you know that Naples is our current generation. Fast on the heels of Naples is Rome. Again, taking it to the next level. If you'd like to have an NDA conversation with you, we would love to invite you to come and learn more about that. But that's our next generation core. And we have a vision that includes 3 of these core steppings in the 2020-21 timeframe. And we think that this is the right strategy. We think this is a way to continue to press innovation back to our innovation engine and playing our rightful share in this market. So we think that's very compelling. And then Milan takes that even further. Kind of to wrap this all up, our focus is to first and foremost drive a level of competition, whether that be performance or cost, but also take the point of reigniting this idea of innovation and driving it back into CPU design. So with that, again, I'll be a broken record. Please come see us. We would love to talk to you. There are few shows like this around the world. CloudFest is one that is near and dear to a number of us. We have enjoyed all of the conversations that we've had over the years. It's a great opportunity for us to learn from you, but more importantly, we want to make sure that you have the opportunity, at the very least the knowledge, we want to drive this into the European and the global hosting and data center markets, and so we think there's a tremendous opportunity. So come see us. Thank you very much for your time. That's all I have prepared, and so I'll turn it back over to the MC.
Thank you so much. Stay with me, I have one question for you.
Okay.
What have we learned there? Daniel has answered the question that was in my mind at the start. What does EPYC stand for? And we know it's EPYC. That was a breakthrough for someone in the room. But secondly, I got a very concise description of what it really is. Let me read my notes. A no-compromise, single-socket server with enhanced security built right into the chip. That sounds pretty compelling to me.
Yep. So the thing to remember about EPYC is there's sort of the world that we envision, and there's the world that is today. Going back to the previous comments, there absolutely is a space in this market for right-sizing to workloads, whether that's a 2-socket or a 1-socket. Where we believe that there's opportunity to differentiate is in the 1-socket, and in the 2-socket, drive a platform that now you can choose to deliver to your customers for the right reasons. At least you have the option. We still believe that it's a very healthy portion of the market. We think if you're looking for differentiation, if you're looking for a way to build a better value statement, whether that's reporting to your internal financial group or taking this to your customers in market, 1-socket is a great opportunity for you.
Thank you. One last question. You mentioned that you are now back in the race and reclaiming your piece of the pie. What are the key challenges or obstacles that AMD has to overcome as you ramp up?
So I tried to address this in the prepared content as well. Perception is such an interesting thing to deal with. It is absolutely critical, and you will see us take a lot of steps to make sure that people understand. We have brought EPYC to market as an x86 platform because that's where the market is. That's where the software ecosystem is. That's where the enablement is. And that's where AMD has a lot of history built into this product. So we definitely are going to continue to, but to this day, have a very robust and compelling ecosystem, an ecosystem that in many ways has come to us and wanted us to be in this market, to drive competition and to drive innovation like the memory bandwidth, like the I/O that we talked about. So that's probably the most significant challenge that I know we can face together. I know we want to engage on, and I know that we want to hear more from you as we're here this week. We have a tremendous opportunity together.
Daniel Bounds, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again.
Thank you.